I just wanted to make sure that you listeners are listening to the Drapedomaniac podcast on doayamedia.com. You are, right?
Peace, family, and welcome to this edition of the Drapedomaniac podcast. This is Ayapo Yapa, the HDIC, that is the head Drapedomaniac in charge. And we're here to have conversations on how to get off this plantation. I'm joined once again by my beautiful wife,
Angela. Peace.
Who is a fellow Drapedomaniac on this run that we're on. Last week, no, it wasn't even last week. How many days ago was it that we watched that documentary?
I don't know. Sometime within the last week, we could say that.
Yeah, within the last week, we watched the documentary on HBO Max, and it was called Say Her Name, The Life and Death of Sandra Bland. And there were a few things that I watched in it that I didn't know, but absolutely none of it surprised me. But I wanted to just talk a little bit about it today. And Angela, what do you have to say about it?
Well, I don't know if there's anything that I can think of specifically that surprised me, because sometimes you might hear a little there was one detail that I was not aware of, and I'm not one who just follows cases, these types of cases very closely. So, but there was one little detail, like for some reason I thought she was in transit from Chicago to the interview, as opposed to having already, gotten the job, being settled in and making the run to the grocery store. But that's the only thing that was kind of like a detail that I think I didn't know or maybe surprised me. But in general, my experience when I do bother to read an article or examine these types of things more closely is that they're consistent. They fit the profile that the system of white supremacy has a template, and there are variations of it, but for the most part, it seems like things stay pretty what you're always saying, or the common expression, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Right. It seems like there's a way that white supremacy operates. But one thing that was a takeaway for me that we have talked about a couple of times since then is this idea that one of the young women in the thing was talking about how many different departments were policing the people on that campus, like campus police, the sheriff's department, the state police. I think it was like 4 or 5 different departments to police, those people. And I think that we're all very heavily policed. And, we've kind of, as we've continued to talk about it, even by, civilians, like, every white person feel like they can ask us, where your papers at, nigga? What are you doing here?
Right.
What's your apartment number? Who's your massa?
Right.
Let
me see your key.
Right.
Just crazy stuff.
So I think that was like kind of a takeaway for me or an evolution. And then I guess the other thing that's kind of like heavy on my mind right now, because my mom's husband passed away. So just like this today, I found this morning he made his transition. And so just thinking about the legacy that we leave behind, and legacy in terms of, as I've notified people, that he made his transition. People are, he was a gentle spirit, or, he was really helpful to me 3 years ago. He kind of, they really helped me. And whenever I come into and out of town, they were the first people I would come to see and the last people I would see before I left. Or just, little things that people are saying that I may or may not be aware of, just in terms of the vibration that was left behind as we move through the world. So it has me just thinking about, legacy. And the same thing with Sandra Bland,
The things that makes me think about is the collective trauma that our people have been deal with now, and will continue to deal with. In that, definitely a deep believer in epigenetic memory. So we have all this trauma already stored up within us as a people. And then when you hear about cases like Sandra Bland, Philando Castile, Tamir Rice, Trayvon Martin, and on and on and on, it's traumatizing to all of us as a group, because you hear about it, and this person may be like physically far removed from you. You may not have a direct blood tie to them as in immediate family, or they may be miles and miles apart. But when you hear about it, just like when we watched this documentary and relived that, I felt so that it was disturbing. Mm-hmm. That was disturbing to me. Mm-hmm. And the part that stands out to me was, maybe a lot of you already knew this, I didn't know this, when they examined the quote unquote bag that she used to hang herself. Supposedly, I have zero doubt that she was murdered. Let me get that out right now. I have zero doubt. But the attorney said that her fingerprints were not on it, nor was her DNA. And that's one of the details that I was not aware of. But it didn't really change anything for me, because I've already determined that she was straight up murdered. So it wasn't like it was a surprise. It was just like another little piece. But as they showed the protests and the marches and so on, I'm like, this is a collective trauma mm-hmm. that we constantly go through. Mm-hmm. And it's on purpose. Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I mentioned while we were watching the documentary is I was really surprised they had images of her body laid on the floor of mm-hmm. the cell. And I found that I was disturbed. Like, after I saw it once, whenever I saw it coming, and I feel like it must have come 2 or 3 times, I didn't want to see it. I covered my eyes. And, it kind of reminded me, I was kind of curious about the filmmaker's decision to include that image in the film. Mm-hmm. When I first came on social media, I would share footage of murders and executions and harassment of Black people. Mm-hmm. But I started to, like a lot of people, kind of question that practice. And I think for me, when I think of the idea of a lynching, part of what I think of a lynching is that one of my relatives, and I feel like Sandra Bland is, whether I know she's related to me, she may or may not be related to me, but that's my cousin. That's my little, that's my little cousin. That's why we feel connected. We relate to her. Mm-hmm. But, when you see one of your cousins, your auntie, your uncle, your daddy, your mama, hanging, dead, executed, tortured, traumatized, that our bodies were hung up to signify to the rest of us to stay your ass in line.
Right.
And I feel that when you see certain images on social media, when I see certain images on social media, I feel like it's way more effective than lynching someone, because if you lynch them, and the people in that immediate community can see it. But people all over the world saw George Floyd being mm-hmm. executed, and I feel like there's on some level for Black people, it's like it's public, and we get the message again and again and again, mm-hmm. and it triggers something that is in our epigenetic memory to stay in line. You could be next. This could be you. And so I didn't know. I was kind of, I don't know who did the documentary and what their intention is, but I didn't care for that particular image, and I noticed it made me feel a certain way seeing her body like that.
Well, there's something else that goes with that, and I think I told you about it, but I started noticing on the news where, when they were about to show like images from a mass shooting or something happening to white people or whatever, they always give this disclaimer, that some of these images may be disturbing. and you might, parental guidance, and you may want to not watch if you're, whatever. And they'd always give this disclaimer. And then, and I can't remember what country in Africa it was, but there was another, basically a slaughter. And they went to those clips, not blurred out. I mean, you could see everything. I mean, you could see all the carnage. And there was absolutely no warning before it. They didn't say anything about these images might be disturbing and so on. And I started noticing that when they show things happening to black people, sometimes they do, but more often than not, they don't give a disclaimer like it's something that's going to disturb you if you see it. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's just basically saying, well, we don't find this disturbing. Mm-hmm. When you see black people slaughtered or laid out or hit by cars and all this, you don't see this parental discretion or give a warning. Mm-hmm. But when it's white people, there's all this discretion. You might find this disturbing and so on. And it's because they don't find it disturbing when things happen to us.
Mm-hmm. I read an article, this was years ago, but I think it was around the time I think we might have spoken about it, but the article was from the perspective of a photographer. And they were talking about the difference in coverage as a photographer for white people and non-white people. Mm-hmm. And some of those same ideas that, it's okay to go to a site and just take a picture of a black dead person or a non-white dead person, but that there's a level of sensitivity in terms of how you cover in things that have to do with white people. And also it's almost like with black people, the hungrier we look, the more distressed we look, mm-hmm. the more distended our stomach is, the more flies you can see flying around us, mm-hmm. the more blood, the more disturbing the image, the more recognition the photographer was saying that they got, that there was like a reward system in place to represent non-white people in a certain way. Mm-hmm. And they noticed it in their work.
Right. Well, that's the thing. When you watch the Sandra Bland documentary, you could watch a documentary about Michael Brown. And like I said, Philando Castile, Breonna Taylor, the names change, but the story is always basically the same. Something happening to some black person who hasn't done anything to anybody, and they meet their demise at the hands of some white people that just rush in. Somebody rushed in on you years ago, mm-hmm. Freaking cops, mm-hmm. And so it can happen to any of us, and it has this chilling effect on us as a population, as a group, because okay, I'm not safe in the street. Mm-hmm. There's no position I can get in that will stop them from shooting at me. I can be laying on my back with my hands up in the air, mm-hmm. and still get shot.
We've literally seen that.
Yeah, there's no position I can take. There's no place I can be that these devils don't come after me or shooting. Mm-hmm. And you had the cop that told the guy to get his ID. He went in his car to get his ID. Mm-hmm. Reached into his car to get ID, and the guy popped him.
Mm-hmm. You can't be obedient enough. You can't be submissive enough. You can't be nonviolent enough. You can't be, you can't pull your pants up high enough. You can't be educated enough to be safe.
Right. And
from them.
And I think a lot of that is on purpose.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they just, it's like we're always talking about, they just continually want to have us off balance.
Right.
Off balance. There's nothing you can do.
Right.
Even when you're not being shot at, you're being, you're being escorted through the system, as far as, I need help, so I have to do all this paperwork. I have to run here, run there, run everywhere. And then after all that's done, then I still need to do some more, to get a couple bucks, or to get what everybody else, or I'll put it like this, to get what white Americans are just given. right? We have to jump through all these hoops and jump through fire and rings and everything else to get it, and then still might not get it. Oh, like those what we watched about the housing, where they have filled out the Section 8 housing, like the forms to get the tickets for it, right? And then they finally got the tickets, and then they couldn't get any housing after they jumped through all those hoops. And it was like over a year later. And they walked in on the one woman, and she had just finally got a place that had nothing to do with the Section 8. And then they came outside and her car had gotten towed away. It's just, one long, protracted emergency.
And I think that there are a lot of carrots in the system. In that film, I don't know if you remember, it was a documentary on Section 8 or something.
Yeah.
But in that documentary, I don't know if you remember, but the people were trying to get into a lottery at the beginning.
Right.
And they were literally running. They weren't jumping over hoops or hurdles, but they were literally
running.
Like a stampede to try to get in this lottery to be selected. So even if you ran fast, you didn't win. Even if you got in the lottery, you didn't win. And the people who supposedly won, who got selected, at least the people who were documented on that, were, they didn't win anything. And I think that there are a lot of carrots in this system. We talk about that. Things that keep you engaged, things that keep you spending your energy, wasting your time on stuff that it's not going anywhere. It's just a waste of time and energy. It's just, to me, it's just a way to keep you drawn into the system, a way to keep you connected to their system. But these carrots are, as far as they're just BS. They're never going to amount to anything. The promise of, I'm going to get Section 8 housing and I'm going to be able to live in, it's going to be, there's all these promises and no delivery.
Go to school, get an education, go to college, work hard, build up a whole bunch of student debt, and then you'll get hired and you'll get this great job and you'll be making all this money. You can live the quote unquote American dream. Work hard, and you work hard, follow the rules, stay out of trouble, pull your pants up, and all this. And then at the end of the road, you're like, brother, I'm in the same place as the person who didn't do jack. What difference does it make within this system? What difference does it make? And what they do, just like you were talking about the carrot, they will hold someone up over you. Oprah, LeBron James,
Obama,
whoever, who slipped through the cracks and made it up there. Well, they did it. How come you can't? That's not only are those exceptions to the rules, but they're allowed to get to wherever they got to, and for the very purpose of just like the chilling effect of showing us what happens to us. They also like to hold up these quote unquote examples in front of us, like, see, all you have to do is marry even deeper into the system. Get the heck out of here.
And I think that it's like, they did it, why can't you? I think that it's kind of like a two-edged thing. Like, on one side of it, it's the same thing, but on one side of it, you're like, Oprah did it, why can't I? Like, I can too. I'm gonna work hard. I'm gonna push. I'm gonna do, and you invest in that way. And so you're wasting your time. And then on the other hand, it's kind of like when you're like, wait a second, this is some BS. Or when you don't buy into the system, they're like, Oprah did it. Why can't you? It's because you're lazy. It's because you're shiftless. It's because you're not hardworking. It's because you're not a blah, blah, like some way of blaming you.
Right. As opposed to recognizing that there is literally a system that's in place to work against you. I mean,
you cannot win. Even when even when I see the people who, like, I don't personally, and I know we have a difference of opinions about this, but I feel like no black person can win in the system of white supremacy. There are no winners. I feel like Oprah Winfrey, Obama, biracials. Like, I feel like no non-white person can win in this system.
Mm-hmm.
When I know I talk about this all the time.
Well, we don't, our disagreement on that is nuanced, because I don't totally disagree with that.
Yeah, it is. But I mean, I think about, I read an article or some clip, I told you about it, but where the rapper who was married to the Blasian model and has 2 children. I can't remember, the rapper from Run DMC. Uncle, his Twitter
Ruckus.
name. No, not Uncle Ruckus. He could be, but he got accused here recently, not too long ago, of but he's supposed to be like a meditator and a vegetarian, but he got accused of raping people, of women.
I know who you're talking about.
But his children, so he's like theoretically he's winning. He's kind of like at the top of the food chain, or close to the top of the food chain.
Right.
He's high enough. Rev Run is it? No, not his brother is Rev Run. He's somebody else. But I was reading this article about his children. And one of his daughters, so they probably go to the quote unquote best schools, and the best schools in this system ain't shit for us. But they go to, one of his daughters was talking about being called being called the N-word at school and harassed at school. And I'm like, we're paying Russell Simmons, Uncle Russ. Uncle Russ is, I don't know what they call him. But we're paying they're supposedly winning. They're able to send their children to the best schools to get the best education with the creme de la creme. And these children are being destroyed, humiliated, harassed, demeaned, unprotected. They're just out here on their own trying to figure out life. And their parents have all of these quote unquote resources. I feel like they're not winning. They're losing. It's a loss.
Right.
I feel like.
And the thing is an absolute trick box. Mm-hmm. Or trick bag, Sonia. My God. But it's an absolute trick box. Because you're in it, you can't get outside of it. And you're in this closed system that you have absolutely no control over.
Mm-hmm. But I feel like I just want to make the point that, to me, even the people are like, oh, well, I feel like Candace Owens ain't no non-white person is winning in this system.
Right.
I don't care how high up they seem to be. I don't care how rich they seem to be. I don't care. To me, none of us are winning in this system.
Right.
We can't.
Well, that's the illusion. You have a lot of our people who will fight, and you get to the top, but what you're not looking at, or what they're not looking at, is that, you're at the top, but you're at the top of the bottom. Mm-hmm. Any place that you go that's within this construct is the bottom. Mm-hmm. And no matter how high you go. In other words, you could say, well, Oprah's a billionaire. Well, okay, let's say that. Okay, let's say that's a given. Okay, Oprah's a billionaire. Yeah, if you were white, you'd be a 20 billion billionaire. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Obama's was the president. He's biracial, but he was the president. Well, and he left office as a multi-billionaire. Well, if he was white, he'd have been a billionaire. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's all relative. Yet to me, somebody that has $500,000 is living it up and wealthy. You know what I mean? It's all relative.
And that's provided that, and I don't even necessarily buy into, I don't think you do either, this idea that, like, having money is like some, that right. You're winning. But even in the context of the society where, a lot of times score is kept by the money that you have, or by the resources that you have, by the money that you have. But, yeah, even the black people who have money are not winning the same way they'd be winning if they were, white.
I consider winning. See, and that's another thing that's kind of backward, in my opinion, is because some people consider winning being at the, high up in this system. But being high up in this system implies that you're deeply connected into this system. Whereas my feeling on winning is the more you disconnect from this system, I mean, when I see people who are like living out in the woods or whatever, they're like off the grid, solar power and everything. I'm like, brother, they're winning. Mm-hmm. They are winning, and they're disconnected from this mess.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like, it's Babylon, and I feel like you cannot, I feel like I am an agent of white supremacy. Mm-hmm. I feel like any of us who are connected to this system are agents of white supremacy. Anything that we do is adding and contributing to propagating this system. Mm-hmm. And, you can do it to lesser degrees or greater degrees. You can do it with greater consciousness or less consciousness. But yeah, like the more detached you can be, I feel like there's no way to win when you're a part of a system that is about demeaning and using you,
And one of the things that shows that we're agents of white supremacy is someone gorilla glues their hair, right? Mm-hmm. And it catches like wildfire. That's all you hear about. They're dogging this young lady out. Like I said to, I think it was Brother Water Sniper, but I was like, blessings to the doctor, the black doctor who got that chemical, out of her hair. But I was like, I wish our people would stop clowning her. Mm-hmm. Because everybody, I already said this to you, but everybody has done something that they thought better of after they did it. There's a whole bunch of stuff I did and do that. I'm like, oh, well, this seems like a good idea. And then it's like, no, it wasn't a good idea.
And how embarrassing if a whole bunch of people knew about it.
Right, exactly. Exactly. And so I said that to say, that catches like wildfire. Mm-hmm. But you're not clowning the people who created atomic weapons, biological warfare, different methods of torture, and on and on. And I mean, you just killed an entire ocean. And so, it's crazy. Mm-hmm. Because if you look at this, especially in the United States, you look at the entire system of government, which is run by white people. It's a hot mess. Mm-hmm. And we're focusing on somebody because they did something that wasn't the best idea. Mm-hmm. We all do that. Mm-hmm. But you're talking about people creating policies and doing things that are murdering people. Mm-hmm. On large scales. Mm-hmm.
Enslaving people on large scales.
Oppressing people on large, yeah, right. Mm-hmm. And that shows, in my opinion, that we are, when we do that, we're agents of white supremacy. Mm-hmm. Because we point out all these little things that black people do, even if it's something severe that we do, relative to what's happening around us by what other people are doing. Of other races. People,
and I use that. You used it, but I just want to say, I have my questions.
Right. But when you measure that up against what they have done, do now, and will continue to do, mm-hmm. The little stuff, and I won't even say little, the things that we do don't even register on the mm-hmm. map. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They don't even register
on the scale.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that there is, kind of back to this idea of the media we consume, whether it's watching, people being murdered and tortured on Twitter or Facebook, or whether it's postcards that were sent out of, lynchings of Black people, mm-hmm. Or whether it's the commercials that we see, or, there's a propaganda and a propagation of white supremacy, mm-hmm. That is just, somehow when I first started this stream of thought, it was connected to what you were saying, but now I lost the connection. But still I wanted to talk about this idea of propaganda and how, initially, like a while ago, like I had heard about propaganda and I knew that Hollywood was not for me, but I guess as I've matured, mm-hmm. I really understand Hollywood as a a method of propaganda, and I really understand media as propaganda in a way that I didn't. Things that seem like, they're not much, or don't seem like they're a big deal, or seem like they're fun and funny and entertainment, whether it's dogging out, this young black woman, or, looking at this image of this dead woman's body, laid out on the floor. Or what, or whether it's, watching Soul or watching Black Panther, like my consciousness of that media as propaganda, and as, a huge part of maintaining and perpetuating the system of white supremacy, or, what is becoming clearer and clearer to me. And it's hard for me to, not to just relax and be propagandized. Like I used to just like relax and consume media, but now it's like I'm more and more conscious of it as, a tool and a weapon of, jacking my mind up and my way of thinking and my way of seeing the world.
Right.
And myself.
That's the thing. I like watching Nollywood with you. I like watching K dramas and so on. That's all. You've seen one, you've seen them all to me. But I guess there is some.
But
variation.
You've only seen one.
That's true.
Well, not the Nollywood.
Right. Well, I watched Train to Busan. But that's horror. K horror. K is Korean. Anyway, like tonight they have the Fred Hampton movie starting, and I just looked it up. As Judas and the Black Messiah is playing. Of course, I'm going to watch that, just like we watched, One Night in Miami,
and Soul,
and Soul, and so we'll watch it. But I already, if it's out of Hollywood, I already know there's going to be some mess and confusion. That's like when we watched Black Klansman. That was a bunch of mess. A hot mess.
That was overtly.
I don't like white savior movies. I don't like. Leave us alone. So I like things that are done by our people for our people outside of the Hollywood system.
But
because you already can expect that there's going to be some mess and confusion in it if it's coming out of Hollywood.
And things designed to have you feel disempowered. For example, I remember, one of my favorite historians in Detroit, something he had said that I hadn't really been conscious of is that abolitionists were basically black people. And I always thought of abolitionists as white people and as white Quakers overwhelmingly. And, as I processed it, it's like, who's going to care more about my liberation than I do?
Right.
Obviously, but there is a propaganda out there that white people will save us. There is this idea out here that, and I feel like these stories that again and again and again have the white savior trope perpetuate and link with, to me, white Jesus on the walls of our churches and on the walls of our consciousness. This idea that we need to submit to and be saved for and hope for redemption through, white folks. I feel like it's not an accident that is a part of our consciousness. And, I think that it leads to other things. And I think that there are other things in media. So when we say mess and confusion, I think that there are very powerful, ideas that we have absorbed through watching cartoons, that we have absorbed through watching commercials, that we have absorbed through watching, an hour of TV a day, or 4 hours of YouTube a day, or 2 hours of Netflix a day. There are ideas that we're absorbing, and they're not accidentally placed there, but they're placed. They're a part of this entertainment in order to keep our minds enslaved, to keep us chained up.
Well, and there's this whole rash. They're going at it strong now, but this whole rash of you can't watch a movie that has a black man in it that's not gay. The black man always is gay, or if he is in a relationship, it's with a white woman. If a black woman is in the movie, she's in a relationship with a white man. If they're showing commercials, it's
or gay.
Or gay. Or they're showing a movie or commercials with a couple, they'll show a full white family, a full Asian family, and then a black man and a white woman, or a black woman and a white man, or a white man with a biracial child that you can tell is biracial. So you, by extension, you know that his wife is white, and vice versa. And so they're pushing and pushing and pushing this. And some would say, well, why would white people do that? My whole thing is, and I realized this when I really started thinking deeply about integration, and anything that is about us coming together with them or them coming together, it always is a loss for us and a gain for them. They always gain something from it, and we always lose something from it. Always, 100%. It never benefits us. Never benefits us, but always benefits them in some way.
They're vampires. But when you ask the question, well, why would they want to propagate this idea that, black people can't be with black people, or black people shouldn't be with black people? One thing I want to say is that a lot of times those images are so quick, like especially on commercials, that it's hard to sort of process them consciously, but our subconscious is processing them and absorbing them as right and true, because a picture is worth 1,000 words. Like literally, images are powerful. Media is powerful. But back to the next issue of magazine on Black love. I feel like there is nothing more powerful than Black love. There's nothing more powerful than black people together.
That's why they fight so hard against it.
And that's why, And I feel like a black person who loves themselves and loves, and like I love me, and by extension, I love black people. And I'm whole, and I have some sense and some semblance of sense, and I'm getting that upends their whole system, because it rests on your back. So as much as every moment of love that we have for ourselves is a threat to their system, Well,
what do you think of the idea of us constantly being like, don't hurt? I'm going to preface it by saying this. Remember how I was struck by somebody? I can't remember who I heard say it, but they said, we're here with our enemy. This is what happens when you are here. When you are, you have to operate. And operate within your own enemy, or those who are trying to oppress you, seeking to oppress you. So, what do you think of like all the marching and the protesting and the speeches and all the stop shooting us, or you're hurting us, or you're this? You have to understand what we're going through. You know how I feel about that.
And you know how I feel about it. One, I feel like they're like, thank you very much for the feedback. It's a very informative feedback loop for them. Like, thank you. I wanted to be hurting your ass, and now you've let me know that I'm hurting you. Thank you.
Right.
And so I feel like they don't care. I mean, and as a grown up woman, I've learned you pay attention to people's actions, not their words. But like their actions, it's obvious they want to hurt you. They don't care. I mean, that's their intention.
Right.
So, that part of how they respond to it, but I feel like more importantly, it's the idea that we are so still tied into the system, that we, we're invested in the system. We continue to be invested in the system, that we want to talk to the system. We want to explain the system. We want to explain to the system. We want the system to accept us. And that's like back to that, being tied into, this mess and confusion, being tied into Babylon. It's a failure for us. It's a L for us.
Right.
Our win is the more removed we are from Babylon, the more winning we are. Mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, there is no win for us.
But you know what? Remember what we were discussing as we watched that Sandra Bland documentary, and the attorney for the family was talking about our rights, and they're sitting around the table. There was some white folks there too. Our rights and this statute and this and that. You're using their laws, number one, and number two. It's something that we always say, but basically, that's all we know how to do.
Mm-hmm.
That's all we know how to do. And I'm not saying that in a way that blames us for doing it. That's all we got.
Mm-hmm. That's what we've been trained to do.
Right.
We've been trained to go to them for help. They're going to save us. They're the answer.
Well, but even beyond that, what else you going to do? Somebody's breaking into the house. What else am I going to do?
Mm-hmm.
Except call the cops and probably end up face down myself.
Mm-hmm.
But besides that, what else are you going to do?
Mm-hmm. And that's the trick bag.
That's the
now
trick.
I can't remember
the trick box, the trick bag.
That's the trick.
Right.
That's the hustle. That's the game.
Right. And so.
But I feel like every little piece of freedom that we can get is a victory. In my meditation practice, I'm a Vipassana meditator. And my teacher says that, and I really believe it, that every moment, if you have just a second of Dhamma, a second of truth, a second of, and I think of this with us as Black people, any second I can get of freedom is important, it's valuable, and we can build on that. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like I may not have the whole answer, I may not know the whole path of how to get out, but I'm learning to think in different ways. I'm learning to think outside of the box. I'm learning to think outside of Babylon. And every moment of freedom that I have from this is good. It's God. It's a blessing. It's, it opens up some little something somewhere. It's one little drop in the ocean of, our collective freedom. It's part of the shift in consciousness. It's part of our paradigm shift. Every little thing is important. So any moment that I can have of clarity or truth or light is immeasurably valuable, even though the propaganda tells us, oh, that don't mean nothing. There's this whole system. You can't fight it. But I don't believe that.
Well, that's the thing. As I read the narrative of Frederick Douglass, and as I read Solomon Northrop's book, 12 Years a Slave, the thing that those two books had in common was that from square one, they never stopped figuring out ways to try to get the heck out. And they weren't like every day trying to escape. They were like planning their escape in their heads constantly working on some way to get out. They never stopped. They never stopped. And that's, I feel, what our people have to do, because we have to figure out creative ways to separate ourselves from this system. But the first thing that you have to do before you want to separate from the system is realize that you're enslaved by it,
and that you want to be free,
and that you want to be free, and what you're experiencing,
and that you are free,
and what you're experiencing right now, no matter how big your bank account is, how nice your house is, how big your car is, or whatever, that you are enslaved. And until you recognize that, then you're not going to try to get out. Or maybe you're happy being in it. To that, I just say, and I mean this sincerely, if you're happy in it, do you. But as for me, just knowing that I'm enslaved, there's no way that I can make peace with being enslaved. And so every day, literally, this about me, literally every day, I'm like, we got to get out of this system, separate from this system in every way possible, as much as possible, every chance possible. And
even for me, it's little things like, I affirm, I am free, I am free, I am free. And any little iota of resistance, when we think of our resistance to the system, sometimes we feel like, or, I remember learning about different rebellions of enslaved people, or, and feeling kind of like, like not really all that good about it. But there are every drop of resistance is valuable. So even just saying to yourself, I'm free, I'm going to escape, I'm going to figure out how to get out of this. Even if you don't have the answer, just working on that mentally, when and choosing to give your mind that assignment. Like, for example, from an affirmationist perspective, you know, the questions we ask ourselves are important. Mm-hmm. What we set our minds to focus. So like, if you're like, well, why does everything bad happen to me? What's wrong with me? You're asking yourself, why does everything bad happen to you and what's wrong with you? So you're going to get those messages back. Mm-hmm. If you ask yourself, how can I be free? What's right with me? Right. What's good with me? How can I escape? How can I get out of here?
Right.
You know, you're going to set yourself up to begin to receive you know, information maybe from the universe, maybe from your ancestors, maybe from, you know, your God, maybe from your colleagues or whatever combination of things, you know, you set yourself up for it, more likely than if you're not looking for a way to escape, if you're not looking for, mm-hmm. you know, a way to be free. Even little people who get kidnapped, when you watch these movies, and I noticed it, because somebody said you have to keep fighting to get free.
Right.
And when we watched that movie, Room, she kept, mm-hmm. you know, it was like there were times when she gave up, but she kept fighting. As Black folks, there are times when you might feel bad, but we keep fighting. Right. You know, when people get kidnapped, you have, like, you know, there's unfortunately, you know, I wish in a way that I lived in a world where I could just, you know, be a human being and just mm-hmm. live and breathe and create and think about God and think about the universe and study people and flowers and garden and, right. you know, but my assignment by God at this point in my life is liberation and freedom. And so mm-hmm. that's the assignment that I've been given by my birth. You know, I was born in this situation, so I can't curl up in a corner and do nothing. I have to,
right.
Do that's my assignment.
And there again, you have to realize that you're enslaved. And just like you said, any iota of fight.
It's 4:00.
Oh, okay. Any iota of fight, is good. It's like the fact that we don't use the term slave anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we say enslaved or the enslaver, because when you say slave
or the slave monster,
but even I don't even like that anymore, because it still has the implication that our people were slaves. They're like,
mm-hmm.
oh, they went
monster.
Right. They got slaves from Africa. The Africans weren't slaves, mm-hmm. or they're the slaves in the United States, or people were born slaves and so on. So no, you have free people who were enslaved.
Mm-hmm.
And when you use the term, this person was an enslaver, not a slave master or a master, because.
But a monster, right. I definitely feel like they are monsters.
Right. But to be a master, there is no negative connotation ever mm-hmm. to a person mastering anything, mm-hmm. like a chess master or whatever.
Mm-hmm. But I use monster, and monster has a negative connotation, at least for me.
Right.
I don't think of it as a positive. But anyway,
yeah. But when you say, yeah, I know when you say enslaver, then that already implies that the person is enslaving someone is the one that's in the wrong, doing something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I have some place that I have to go, but we started this so late. We've been up here an hour, but I'm going to let you go on and close out.
Well, there's nothing to.
I have to get dressed.
Yeah, there's. All right. So I guess the questions that I have are. Or, you know, the challenge that I give myself and the question that I ask myself is, what is my legacy? Is my legacy, what is my legacy? What legacy do I want to leave behind? When people think of me, when people, think of their experience of me, when people think about how I made them feel, or, you know, what they got from interacting with me, I want to be as conscious as I can on the front end of what my intention is with, relating to other people, to my family, my community, myself. And then also, the question is, how am I affirming my freedom? What can I do today to affirm my freedom? What can I do today to contribute to me being free, and to my family being free, and to my community being free? So those are kind of the questions that, you know, I have, and I invite you to, you know, ponder for yourself, journal on, meditate on, ask yourself, those things. What is your legacy? What are you leaving behind with people? And how are you affirming your freedom? How are you working toward your freedom? How are you adding to your freedom? Peace.
I'm back. I just wanted to close out by saying thank you for listening to this edition of the Drapetomaniac podcast. This is Ayapo Yapa, the HDIC, that is the head Drapetomaniac in charge, and my beautiful, beautiful black wife,
Angela, the non-H-dick.
But we're both on the run.
Yes, oh yes.
So we're wishing you safety, security, and sanity through separation, peace, and blessings.
Peace.
Until next week at the same time, we'll see you on the run.
And thank you again for listening to the Drapetomaniac podcast. Tune in next week at doiamedia.com. DOIAMEDIA.com. And again, we'll catch you on the run. Peace.